Today, we're diving into a really profound identity crisis, one faced by Taiwanese intellectuals back in the Japanese colonial era. And we're going to do it by looking at two incredible novels that track this journey, a journey from, this passionate hope all the way to just devastating disillusionment. Just think about that for a second. Imagine feeling like a total outsider absolutely everywhere, not just in the country of your colonizer, but even in the one place you've dreamed of your whole life as your true home, your motherland. This quote, wow, it just cuts right to the heart of that whole painful mess. All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll set the scene. Then, we'll meet our two main guys as they head to China. We'll see how they get this shocking rejection, and then look at the two, drastically different ways they deal with it. And all of that helps define what it really means to be an orphan of history. Okay, first things first. To really get this journey, you have to understand the intense internal conflict that was going on for Taiwanese intellectuals under Japanese rule. I mean, this was the early 20th century, and it was complicated. So you've got this major split. On the one hand, politically, they're subjects of the Japanese empire. They're dealing with discrimination, oppression, all the pressures of colonial life every single day. But on the other hand, culturally, ethnically, they saw themselves as Chinese, and this led them to build up this almost mythical, idealized image of China, the motherland, as this perfect, welcoming home, a place they could finally escape to. Now, this exact conflict, it's the engine that drives two of the most important novels in all of Taiwanese literature. And each one follows a protagonist who's basically on a quest to find that perfect, idealized home. And what's so fascinating here is the parallel. You've got Liu Cheng, who's just full of this patriotic fire, right? He wants to go and physically fight for his motherland. And then you've got Hu Taiming, who's looking for something deeper, something more spiritual, a real sense of belonging. But here's the kicker. Even with these different motivations, both of them take the exact same physical journey, from Taiwan to China, and they're both driven by the exact same powerful dream of just being accepted. So they go full of hope, but the motherland they actually find is, well, it's nothing like the one they spent their entire lives dreaming about. And this, right here, is where everything starts to spiral towards a really devastating breaking point. That's Liu Cheng. Can you feel the passion in that? He gets to China and he is just brimming with it. He is ready to join the anti-Japanese resistance, to dedicate his whole life to the cause. He's 100% sincere. And then, bam, reality hits. His dream just shatters against this solid wall of suspicion. The very thing he's proud of, his Taiwanese identity, is the very thing that makes him an automatic suspect to the compatriots he came to help. His sincerity, his passion, it means absolutely nothing. And this wasn't just a one-off thing. Hu Taiming goes through the exact same experience. He shows up, he's totally open, totally sincere about wanting to help, and what does he get for it? He gets thrown in prison, officially labeled a potential spy, just because he's from Taiwan. This just lays out the impossible trap they were in, doesn't it? To have any chance of surviving in their so-called home, they have to literally erase who they are. They have to lie, pretend they're from mainland provinces, because telling the truth makes them the enemy. So think about it. They're not Japanese, but they're not accepted as Chinese either. They're truly orphans. So what do you do? I mean, really, what do you do when you're faced with that kind of complete and utter rejection from the one place you believed you truly belonged? How do you even cope? Well, this is where the stories of our two protagonists just split apart in the most dramatic and frankly tragic ways. Okay, so here are the two tragic responses to the exact same trauma. Liu Cheng, he just doubles down. He clings desperately to this perfect vision of the motherland, no matter what the evidence tells him. But for Hu Taiming, the shock is just too much. His entire sense of self, his whole identity, it just shatters, leading to a complete mental breakdown. Get this. After 8 years of struggling, of failure, of being treated like a spy, Liu Cheng is on a boat heading back to Taiwan. And in this moment, the analysis calls it near hysterical, almost blind devotion. He shouts out his loyalty. But it's not a statement of strength. It's an act of desperation. It's him refusing to accept the devastating truth of what he's seen. Hu Taiming's end is something else entirely. He goes back to Taiwan, suffers even more, and eventually he just snaps. But here's the weird part. His madness becomes a kind of freedom. In this state, he writes this furious poetry, gives these wild speeches denouncing everyone, the Japanese colonists, the hypocrites he met in China. His madness, oddly enough, lets him forge a totally new identity, one that blends his old heritage with this fierce, new Taiwanese consciousness. So, what are we supposed to make of these two endings? You've got blind faith on one side and madness on the other. What's the real takeaway from these incredibly tragic journeys? Well, the analysis argues that these aren't just sad stories about two guys. They represent something bigger, the orphan's fate. And what that is this profound psychological damage, this distortion that happens when you're trapped, when the empire that rules you rejects you, and at the same time, the cultural home you've been longing for rejects you too. Your very sense of who you are gets twisted to the breaking point. So, in the end, these two classic novels deliver a pretty grim verdict. For people like Lu Qing and Hu Taiming, there was no healthy, stable way out of this identity crisis. The only psychological escape routes they had from their impossible situation were either to retreat into a blind fantasy or to completely lose their minds. You know, these stories from Taiwan's colonial past, they're such a powerful reminder of how deeply our sense of self is tied to our sense of belonging. And they force us to ask a question that's just as relevant today as it was back then. When the entire foundation of your identity is shattered, what's left?